So, okay, this bit is on understanding your rights. So there's two sections to this one. The first bit is when it's absolutely vital, the local authority or those who treat you regarding your care and role definitely need to be made aware and are held accountable by the first section of rights that I'm going to cover. But the second one is more of not fully on entitlement, but there's certain things in there that you can, doesn't really fully cover carers' rights. Some of it does, but it's more of entitlement. To be honest, I would, if it was personally up to me, I'd say they're all fundamentally important. So let's start with the really important stuff that you can hold those to account if they don't exercise your rights as a carer. First thing is to be identified. And a good example is if you are caring and you're suffering in regards to your liberty, freedom of movement, it's hitting you financially as well. You're completely isolated. The cared for is suffering, and this could be due to a certain amount of time as well, a length of time, and it leads to a serious incident. And the family could sort of step in and say, look, he wasn't identified, or she wasn't identified, so therefore we're going to hold you to account on this. So your right as a carer, especially under the Care Act 2014, and it can even include other acts as well, things in law. If you're not identified as a carer and the carers themselves suffer and the cared for suffer, then you can exercise your rights, especially if you're not given a case assessment and the local authority or professional body sort of comes and says, oh, we didn't know about that. Well, sorry, you should have identified that carer. So you identified, but it's not just, doesn't stop with just identification in itself. It's also having your views taken into account and into consideration as a carer as to why you're caring in the first place. You've got to seriously take it into account. When they act on it, it's a tricky one, but they should, and this, remember I did mention human rights before that, your views should definitely be taken into account on the situation, on why you're caring. Give them specific advice and information to help you in your role as a carer. Now, notice it's specific. You can't expect them to help you on everything in your life. It's not possible. But when it comes to the caring role, it's got to be specific to that. This is more related to when you are a working carer. You've got a job and you're working 9 to 5. But let's say your parents, I'm just doing that example here, one of your parents has dementia. It's only fair, if you live with your parent, you'll be given flexible working patterns, and it's within your rights to do so. And whether they enforce, it's a tricky one. And to be honest, again, with the carer, they might not even know about it. They might not even exercise that. So, I'm going to have to sort of struggle to work extra hours, wear myself into the ground while I'm trying to care at the same time. Well, no, that's not right. And then this goes all the way to the human rights again. And this is one of the reasons I'm doing the course. I'm trying to make carers and those who are caring aware of these things, that they don't have to work themselves to death while they're trying to care at the same time as well. It's difficult to almost impossible. So following on from hopefully your workplace's policy on carers, they should offer either time off or flexible working pattern in regards to that, not add-on hours to that other hours you're doing caring for someone. Free care health checks, so free flu jabs, free health checks on your physical and mental well-being, usually at GP surgery. Tricky one though, during the COVID-19 pandemic, I don't think carers were fully protected characteristics. So certain things they would have been charged for, and there was a lot of lobbying on this. I think it was due to the kits in regards to testing for COVID, and so no, carers should be paying, not protected. So it's a tricky one, but still free health checks, and make sure you get them. No point caring for someone and then finding out you're you'll end up being cared for yourself because you're not getting nothing's been sort of diagnosed early enough to sort of say, well, hang on, you're not eating healthily. I think you need to work on that. Have you considered being referred to this area that can help you? So your health and well-being, both physical and mental health, free health checks regarding that, and information on that as well. This is a tricky one, but very vital, as I said at the start of this bit. You're caring under difficult circumstances. You should be given the choice to say you're no longer prepared to care. Now, quite a few people sort of balk at this sort of thing, say, no, I'm going to still care. But then there's situations where you're caring, where the stress is immense. I can't think of any examples at all, but you're particularly caring 24/7, you've got no access to resources. And it might not be your fault anyway, to be honest, but the option should be there that if you're no longer prepared to care, others will step in and do it, and they're funded to do that. Help to develop your own carer support plan. It's your carer's assessment, your carer's support plan, and there's many different types of assessments and support plans. But what shouldn't happen is that say, okay, we've identified you as a carer, and I go away, we'll develop your support plan, and then they put down the minimal amount of what you're entitled to, and say, well, this should support you. What you're moaning about. You should be there helping to develop that support plan. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be helping you. It's going to be helping them. I suppose meeting in the middle. What could be helping both of you, I suppose, but more yourself than them, because you're the one doing the caring, and you're the one who's going to. I suppose you've got to think of the future as well. You're not going to be cared forever, so think of the long term as well as the short term. This is a very, very big issue, really. As up until 2022, we have the health and social care being revamped, and this was almost omitted on including families and carers to be involved with their loved ones or the cared for's hospital discharge. They felt, the hospital's under a lot of pressure, staff's under pressure, so therefore we should just do it. But who's the carer going to end up with? It's going to end up with the carer. So the carer needs to be included in the hospital discharge plan. This is not just on the Carers Act 2014, on other up-and-coming things. They should be consulted, and even include when someone's admitted to hospital as well, especially if mentally they don't have the foresight as to why they need to go into hospital. It could be due to critical physical health reasons. Why shouldn't the carer be consulted on that as well? Who's looking after them? Personal budget for the carer. I should avoid being political. I'm about to say it's hardly much, but it can help. Every bit can help, especially in these times on this course. The strain on finances for almost everyone, particularly carers. They need that support, and a choice there to where your personal budget should go, and it could be for many things. Even though it might not be that much, you should have the choice on where it should go and on how it can help you provide care. So I think on these things, this is more of almost entitlement, but it does also stray into holding those accountable if they fail to follow things up. So the first thing is, and a lot of it will, unfortunately, due to my sort of mental health care's background, a lot of it will tend to fall on what mental health services, I suppose, should provide friends, families and carers and neighbours. And the first thing is obviously receive a service that recognises the importance of families and friends and carers and involvement and planning. One of the first things trial of care is recognised to a certain extent. And it's not just trial of care, there's other things out there, there's 4PI, standards, involvement, helping to plan services, commissioners who buy up health services should also, and it should be in a charter, stated that carers are welcome to help plan those services and involved on how the services will affect the cared for and the carer, and also engagement as well. So basically what I'm trying to say is you don't want a made up sort of policy. No one recognises it, it's not being tested, and it's not doing its job either in either health or mental health services, and they say, well, there you go, carer or cared for, this is what we're going to offer you. A one-time meeting, we take your views for the year, and then we disappear off again, and you won't hear from. See, that's not going to work, is it? So this is more entitled to, linked almost to carers' rights. If these things fall over, I don't think you could exercise your carers' rights unless it starts hitting services really badly. Then it does lead to that. Rapid response in an emergency situation. Not all services, unfortunately, we've got to be realistic, can provide that. Some do, and some clearly state that if your loved one is taken seriously ill, there should be a rapid response in regards to that situation. And again, mental health as well, sort of focusing on, and should, exercise your rights in this. Does the service provide it? Where do they provide that? Ask around. This is almost linked back to what I've mentioned in the previous section. Be treated with respect and understanding about your caring role, and a bit of courtesy. You're speaking to a professional. You want them to sort of take your views into account as to why you're worried, concerned about the cared for and about your own well-being. So basically, they can't just say, "Oh, we'll refer you," and that's it. They need to listen to a set amount of time. Taking seriously, expressing concerns. This is a tricky one, and I think this is a big problem. There are different methods of complaint. I'm going to do a whole lesson on this in one of the later modules. Probably take half an hour. But unfortunately, I'm thinking of, again, it's not just mental health services, other services as well. There are methods of complaints, and they should let the family and carer know what those methods are. They can't just sort of speak to the patient advice liaison service and that's it, or they just can't just say just phone and that's it. And they should be encouraged to complain, and at a high level there should be quality improvement doing the job to measure those complaints and what the complaints are about. But I don't see this. I really don't see this in mental services, like this education. You think of recovery colleges where there's an education, hence the name college. You don't see anything like that. Probably aimed at the patient most of all, like understanding psychosis, understanding addictions, things like that. Yeah, carers can go in them, and they should as well. But things like that, methods of complaints, it's very rare. So helps with the difficulties of caring. This I'm talking about information, advice, advocacy. That's another problem though. You don't really get many care advocates, hardly at all. Resource issues, I would have thought. And I'm thinking of care centres really tricky. Informed on the range of relevant services, not just for the carer, but for the carer. The carer should be referred to like as a carer support group. Is there counselling available for the carer? Your checkups again, your health checkups. So they should be informed of the relevant services, not just referred as well, but what perhaps mental services is providing for the carer. Including this, again, it's tricky, including care planning, implementation and review. Now, why I'm saying it's tricky is because the big C starts raising its ugly head, and I'm talking about confidentiality. Not all families and carers are included because of that. And I suppose in some sense it's up to the patient. But it becomes a problem if the carer, let's say you're living with their loved one, that becomes a problem if you're not involved and things keep repeating themselves when the person's falling ill or relapsing time and time again. This needs to be looked at carefully. How involved is the care involved in regarding the planning, implementation, and the review? I'm not talking about the review, I'm talking about the care planning approach is what they call them, CPAs. But it's not just mental services; it's also in your acute hospitals as well. the kid, especially if someone is old and frail, and you're looking after them long term. You should be involved. This is again similar with care workers coming in, looking after your person in your home or in their home. You're visiting them. You should involve the family and carer. This is also very important, and I do think it's a tricky one as well. Not all carers and families, some they don't seem to, it's almost their fault as well. They don't know. So when a problem arises, they don't know who to go to. But to be honest, with the social worker or care coordinator, should be telling you who are the names of those in that support team. Consulted on the discharge plan. And a lot of families and carers will look in horror if a service says, look, we cannot keep your loved one forever in our services, resource issues perhaps, or strain on waiting times. So why not be involved in the discharge plan? And it could again link to the GP, forming that relationship with the GP on picking up what needs to be done long term. Helped with this actually links with the help with difficulties of caring, to be honest. So problems, or in regards to the plan implementation review. So if probably, as I said earlier on, if someone's relapsing time and time again, and it's getting worse, how can those services help you? Obviously, I'm still thinking about mental health services, but it can extend to others. For instance, someone with physical health problems is getting worse and worse. Something's not right. So how can those services help you? What's been missed here? Why is the person's health failing? Why is this being put on the carer? And worse for wear, things get worse from there. It's going to filter all the way up to your human rights, to be honest. Information about the condition, treatment, and possible side effects of the medication. One thing I notice when I visit community mental health teams is what leaflets they have on display regarding medication, and having the family and carer also invited to meetings about these things. So it's information about the condition. And again, this is going to clash with the big C, the confidentiality. Some services are not that upfront in regard to giving information. They might sort of say it's confidential. And it's a shame, because at the end of the day, the carer and the cared for might pay that heavy price. Private information, if this is also in the best interest of the patient. And it's not always a clash between the cared for and the carer. Fair bit of the time, the cared for says, yeah, I like the care involved, they're helping me. It can be tricky also in mental health. There might be capacity issues. The person might not have the foresight to see the reason why family or care or the friend or neighbour is trying to do what they're trying to do to provide that care. So this is in relation to information provided to the carer as to why certain things they need to be involved in or contacted on. And a tricky one again, culturally accepted treatment options. I'm talking about religious practices, beliefs. These should be taken into account and not discriminated against, especially when care for needs to do spiritual things, whatever. There must be a way as non-discriminatory. This is perhaps another course, to be honest, and it might be linked to the care ethnicity, but it can be a problem if the cared for, based on their almost race or religious options, can be discriminated against, even unconsciously. Again, another course for another day. Almost entitlement in some sense, to be honest, in this day and age, and I hope things change. But this is something I'm briefly covering, just to as a list on what rights you need to be made aware of